come the last week in May next month, the African Development Group would be choosing a new leader, a new president. I know by now Africans are used to Dr. Akinwumi Adesina and all the work that he does on the continent and also relating even with Africa. Remember, even just last week we had him on our sister program, Sunrise Daily. Well, his tenure comes to an end by next month. And of course, there are candidates who wish to take up the responsibility which he's been holding. So we're speaking to one of them today on the program. He's Dr. Samuel Maimbo. He's the candidate, or one of the candidates of the presidency of AfDB. Joins us from Lusaka, Zambia this morning to share his vision and plans. Dr. Maimbo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. This is very timely.
Yes, obviously it is, Dr. Maimbo, but I must tell you, expectations are really high because Dr. Akinwumi Adesina has really left, or is going to leave, very big size of shoes for you. I wonder how prepared you are to fill in those big shoes that is left on the continent.
Absolutely. President Adesina has been a larger-than-life character on the continent. And I've always seen the leadership of the African Development Bank as a relay race. My responsibility is to take on that baton with humility, with ambition, with a sense of urgency to reflect the Africa we find ourselves in. There is a lot taking place globally, as you've just rightly mentioned in your global program. My responsibility is to make sure that the African Development Bank continues to be run as a first-rate global institution, that we tackle the challenges that governments across the continent are facing regarding debt, regarding financial management, and most importantly, the challenge of growing the continent as quickly as we possibly can. We must learn to trade with each other. We must increase our investments in agriculture and create the jobs that our young people expect at this time.
Yeah, well, it's good you mentioned trade because we know that is very sensitive at this time. And, you know, WTO has told us how much the global economy would be losing at the rate of the trade tariffs that we have now. Of course, if it gets any worse, then the loss will be even more. And Africans have been challenged to take the bull by the horn at this time, reduce dependence, and look inward. So I wonder what strategy you bring on board, you know, to calm the nerves or maximize the opportunities for Africa at a time like this.
One of the most important things to keep in mind is that development is a long-term game. And as much as we will experience pain in the short term, it is absolutely fundamental that as quickly as the tariffs are going up everywhere else in the world, we are bringing them down here in Africa.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Maimbo.
What's very clear
Dr. Maimbo, I hope you can hear me.
Implement the Africa Free Trade Agreement. We've got to do it.
All right, Dr. Maimbo, let's just take a minute off the program.
Yes, please.
We see that your network seems to be fluctuating. So we'll just take a minute so we sort that out and try to come back on the program with you. So perhaps you have to log off and then log back in, but you know, we'll see what we can do here. So we'll just take a break now and then we'll come back to continue this conversation. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. We do hope that the network will be more friendly with us. Now, Dr. Maimbo, can you hear me? I hope we have a better connection now.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. So you were talking about the need for Africa to look inwards, and you mentioned the AfCFTA.
Indeed, I was stressing the fact that we no longer have 10 years to implement the Africa Free Trade Agreement, that we must focus on implementation right now across the entire continent. As quickly as the tariffs are going up everywhere else in the world, they must be coming down here. But we must keep in mind that trade amongst ourselves is not just about what happens at the border. It's about how we negotiate our contracts collectively, how we ensure that people we're negotiating with realize we're a 1 billion people market that is the youngest in the world, that's going to continue to be a working population for years to come.
Yeah, and then you also have, of course, some plans which are already in place. For instance, in Nigeria, the AfDB is working on the agro-processing zone because we realize food security and electricity. I know there's the program between the AfDB and the World Bank. These are measures that would help Africa to maximize these trade opportunities and intra-trade routes.
Absolutely. There is much to be proud of about the work that is currently taking place on the continent. The increase in the number of special processing zones is absolutely the right thing to do. My focus will be scaling up all of our investments so that we do it at pace and scale. We must integrate the special economic zones with a clear strategy to link our ports on the continent. As you rightly pointed out, this requires significant investment in energy. Without energy, we will not be able to create the jobs that we want. A key element of the investment in energy, and I'm actually quite delighted with the work that has been done between the World Bank and the African Development Bank with M300. Our challenge is to make sure that the regional power pools that we have in Southern Africa, in East Africa, in North Africa, West Africa are connected. We must create one energy pool across the continent. That's the only way we reduce the cost much more effectively. And importantly, that's how we ensure that we're adding value to our products as close to their source of origin as possible. That's the
Well, I hope we can get Dr. Mindful back. Certainly a whole lot to try to thrash out with him as he contests, to become the president of the African Development Bank Group, which we know, of course, is a huge responsibility, especially at this time on the continent. He was just talking there about the issue of infrastructure and power and getting Africans to trade among themselves. But of course, we also have the challenge of, for instance, the Sahel states now have a tariff against ECOWAS. So you have some of those political divides that sometimes hinder, apart from the infrastructure, which has been there for decades, that also hinder, some of those. I said, we have Dr. Mindful back. Are you back, sir?
I can hear you clearly. Your team has disabled the visual, but I like the fact that you have emphasized what is happening between our regional blocks. It is absolutely essential that we take lessons from all of the regional blocks across the world and what they have been doing. It's not just the tariffs, and I must stress this because tariffs are one point in a long series of value chain decisions that are made. It's the decision about what products you emphasize within your regional block. It is about how you negotiate with other blocks and how you, and here I'm not just talking about the blocks on the continent, I'm actually referring to the blocks globally as well. The rules of global trade are being rewritten as we speak. And it is absolutely essential that we have a strong African Development Bank representing and working with governments today and negotiating and making sure that Africa's voice, Africa's seat at the table is strong. This is also a reminder that economics and economic development is also a political process, which is why it was important for me to go and meet with the African Union chair, congratulate him on his appointment, and emphasize that in my view, the African Development Bank and the African Union are two sides of the same coin that must work together to tackle some of our most challenging, most significant challenges that we face today. Inevitably, we must grow our economies. We must make sure we're not leaving anybody behind, not women, not young people, not anybody who has been affected by conflict on our beautiful continent.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
yeah, and we all know that you can hardly do or record economic growth if you don't have stability politically and with your trade partners and your neighbors and all of that. So that's one thing. But you talked about inclusivity when you talked about women and children. And we know on the continent we have a huge percentage of informal sector. Sometimes it does seem like they are cut away from government policies even in their country, but when you talk about region or blocks, then it seems they are further away. How do you hope to bring them closer? Because you do need the private sector, the informal sector, if you want to make progress on the continent.
You're absolutely right. In the more than 20 years that I've been working in development, I've worked in some of the most challenging places in the world. I've also worked in economies that are largely informal. A fundamental rule is that we very rarely have the privilege of working in an environment where what we learned in our classrooms applies immediately. I've always worked in the realm of third and fourth, fifth best solutions. We must be creative. The good news is there is no more entrepreneurial, enterprising class than the SME that you find on the African continent. They navigate risks in ways that are unbelievable. They deliver on their products. What they need is a helping hand with finances, with regulation, with access to markets, with fundamental basics of energy and infrastructure. So the 3 points I would stress is the needs of the SMEs are just the same as the large corporate enterprises. They're just at different scale. So let's double down on making sure that when we're putting large trunk infrastructure on energy, that energy is delivered to retail communities right here within our cities, within our rural areas, because the small enterprises benefit. Secondly, when it comes to financing, it stresses the fact that the African Development Bank must partner with other African financial institutions across the globe as well as within country, because they will have the reach to the SMEs that they need. Third, it's about government policy. It's about consistency of that policy. One of the challenges SMEs have is when policies vary from time to time, it's very difficult to navigate. So I advocate very strongly for governments to adopt a policy. It's very difficult to design the perfect policy. Don't stress too much about it. Just have a decent policy that you stick with and apply for a very long time. But a critical function that multilateral institutions must play in this type of environment is creating the links for SMEs with larger firms and those firms to even larger firms. Those are the relationships that make a difference when it comes to SME development on the continent. And it's absolutely essential, as you rightly pointed out, because they employ the vast majority of our people. They drive a lot of African economies, and they give us the shock absorbers that make sure that when crisis comes, we're able to bounce back over and over again.
Yeah, so in achieving this, Dr. Maiba, you have to deal with politicians. And I mean, on our continent, politicians have, certain attitude, which sometimes, as you noted, getting the policy implemented down to the grassroots where it's really needed could be difficult. I wonder how you plan to handle this.
In the same way I have been handling it over the last 6 to 7 months that I've been campaigning for this position, I've always learned that a politician is a human being with very clear interests of what he wants to achieve, either for himself or for his community. It's important you understand that. The good news is that as I have gone the full length and breadth of this continent, we have a generation of politicians who know what they want to do for their communities, who have seen what is taking place globally and know that the cavalry isn't coming, that the solutions are going to be homegrown this time round. There's a generation of politicians who realize that our young people today have access to social media that has made politics more transparent than it used to be. You can no longer go through a political cycle, make promises that you cannot keep. Politicians are being caught out on false promises. And therefore, the pace at which I've been able to settle very quickly with politicians right across the continent on the work that needs to be done in agriculture, in infrastructure, in energy, in trade has been exceptionally reassuring. And that is why the message I've been sending about this being Africa's time has been resonating with politicians. That said, as important as they are not the only community in this development race, which is why in every city I meet young people, I meet the private sector, I meet civil society, and making sure that we have basic agreement on what it will take for us to develop is the work of every candidate in this race, will be the work of the next president as they pick up the baton from President Adesina. A sense of urgency is what's creeping into development. The transition from an aid-based model to one that's private sector-led model, that's the stuff that excites me. And this is why speaking to you is important, because in whatever scenario you can think about, Nigeria is central to Africa's development. The resources, the financing, the brain power that Nigeria has, that has to be unleashed on the rest of the continent. Nigeria is an important constituency for the African Development Bank, and it's going to remain one for years to come.
Yeah, thank you so much. That makes me feel good being a Nigerian, but it also puts you...
You absolutely should.
It also puts you in a difficult situation, which I think Dr. Adesina had to face and I believe managed, well. Because, for us Nigerians, when we see our people anywhere, we expect the whole attention to be on us. I don't know if it's that way with your people also. How do you, being the president of AfDB, that's supposed to be like the parent of all the countries on the continent, how do you balance it so that one country doesn't feel left out or your country of origin doesn't have too much attention compared to others?
I don't think that's a difficulty at all. I think that is something to celebrate. The diversity of this continent is amazing. When I have lots of Nigerian friends and we joke about the difference in personality, the difference in energy, but that's what you need to grow. Every single team that I have led, my number one goal is to make sure that my leadership team reflects the diversity of my constituents. And therefore, the diversity of the leadership team at the African Development Bank, to make sure we have people from right across the continent, is front and center. Every single community wants to see their own community grow. My Nigerian friends might just be much more vocal about it, but trust me, my quiet, reserved Zambians are just as eager to get the same amount of development for their children and grandchildren. That's a diversity we must celebrate. The differences in language right across the continent, our access to a deep history gives us fundamental building blocks for us to grow as a continent, which is why when people talk about the digital dividend, when they talk about AI and what it will do for development, as Africans, we must pause and ask ourselves difficult questions. Number one, do we have the energy and infrastructure across the continent to make sure that we can compete with the rest of the world? How are we making sure that when we use technology such as large language models, are those models taking into account the rich history that Yoruba has, the rich history that Zulu has? If we don't do that, yes, we will get quick answers within seconds, but those answers are based on a culture that does not reflect our full diversity. It's therefore incumbent for the African Development Bank, whenever we hear something exciting, such as AI, digital technology, to reflect on where we are as a continent, to make sure that our history, our culture, our experience is embedded in that technology. We must invest in technology firms that are African-born, African-led, building on that infrastructure. We must be updating our curriculum. When we talk about youth employment, it's not just about creating jobs when these kids are 18, 20. It's about going back to see what their curriculum is. I want someone to be talking about interest rates as, much earlier in their career than we currently have right across the continent. So, my dear Nigerian sister, I celebrate the level of energy and the level of voice that Nigeria brings. This is exactly why I said Nigeria is central to what we do in Africa. That's how we grow. We grow by making sure that those economies that are robust are flying as fast as they possibly can.
All right, thank you for celebrating us. We celebrate you too. I mean, because Zambians, even in your calm ways, and other Africans, you also have your energy and you bring your spice. So how would you describe your leadership style? Because I want to believe, as expected, a lot of people will be comparing you to Dr. Adesina, at least in the first few. Hopefully, you're the one that's going to be there. You know, the first early days or years of attaining an office, you're always compared to your predecessor. Or if it was Dr. Adesina, this is what he would have done. This is how he would have approached it. So as you prepare, you know, to take up this responsibility, if you win, we wish you the very best, obviously. What would be your leadership style? What do you think will make you outstanding amidst other candidates?
For those who want to spend time comparing me to President Adesina, they will have plenty to talk about. He wears a bigger shoe size, he's taller than me, and there's plenty that we can discuss. My leadership style is simple. It's about rolling up my sleeves, making sure that we are getting to the core of the issues that need to be addressed. It's about having honest conversations. In most of the meetings that I have led, I literally designate one person to criticize everything that we discuss as a group. There is strength in diversity. There is strength in exploring different options. My leadership style is about empowering people so that you will always hear more than one voice from my team. And those people who are entitled, who are given that voice, will find that I will hold them accountable. We will discuss realistic targets. I want to discuss results. That's my happy place. I want to make sure that I build on the legacy that President Adesina is going to leave us, to focus the institution on implementing the high levels of ambitions and expectations that have been led. In simple terms, I have an inclusive leadership style. I have a transparent one. I have a results-focused style. And I always talk about what have we done in every conversation. And finally, and most importantly, I'm not shy about making mistakes. I'm not shy about learning from the past, because development is messy. There is no perfect solution, but there is an option for us to put our best foot forward every single day.
All right, Dr. Samuel Bembo, candidate for presidency of the African Development Bank, we certainly wish you the very, very best. And I know by the final day of this month, we would know the result. We certainly wish you would be the one there with a smile on your face, and we'll be smiling with you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to coming to Nigeria and celebrating with my Nigerian brothers and sisters in the only way Nigerians do, which is celebrate big. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you too, and wish you the best.
Bye-bye.